So what are the pros and cons of starting a podcast, a YouTube channel, or both this year? In this video, I interview best-selling author and founder of Smart Passive Income, Pat Flynn, and he shares some of his best tips and strategies for growing your YouTube channel and podcasts, the pros and cons of each of them, and how to monetize these platforms coming up. Hey, what's up? Think Media, Sean Cannell here, bringing you the best tips and tools for building your influence with online video. And I'm sitting here with Pat Flynn. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
Man, it's so good to be hanging out with you again. We're here at NAB in Las Vegas. And today we're talking about podcasting versus YouTube, the pros and cons of each of them, and really strategies for both. And this is a big conversation because a lot of people are starting YouTube channels, maybe wanting to launch a podcast. A lot of people watching might have one or the other, and they want to start the other one. So there's monetization strategies, how to launch, and a lot of things that go into this. But before we dive into the topics, Pat, if people are just meeting you, what have you been up to and what are you doing online?
Yeah, so online, I've been online for about 10 years now, and I do have a YouTube channel. It's been up for about 9 years. I do have a podcast that's been up for about just about the same amount of time. So I've been in both worlds for the longest time now, and it's really interesting to see what's happening in both of those spaces, where things are headed in the future. We're going to talk about that. So, and there's a lot of people who want to do both as well, which we want to do both, but you can't just do both and just dump the content in there and call it a day. There's specific strategies that you must know about, or else you're going to actually perhaps hurt your YouTube channel in certain ways or hurt your podcast. So we'll talk about those things for sure.
I love it. So let's start with some pros and cons. And the reason I wanted to talk about this with you is because you have deep experience in both areas, especially YouTube now as your YouTube channel has been growing. So when you think about pros and cons of just YouTube, kind of in comparison, what is your perspective there?
So let's talk first about just the mechanics of how one might put content on that platform. So YouTube, obviously you have to shoot a video, and that's a lot more, there's a lot more to think about versus just recording audio, right? You don't have to sort of look nice on a radio or on a podcast, for example. But on the other hand, once you have your file ready to upload, you just upload it directly to YouTube and you build your channel from there, which is super easy once you have that content. On a podcast, it's a little bit different. You need to set things up first beforehand before you can kind of have that publish and go kind of situation. And what that means is you actually need to host your media files on a separate media hosting platform. And there's many out there that you can choose from, and they're fairly cheap. It's just another added step because you don't actually upload individual files to iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Google or Spotify. What happens is you have to create what's called an RSS feed, so that you can submit that RSS feed to those channels. And then what those channels do is iTunes goes, did Sean come out with a new episode today? Nope. Okay, no worries. Oh, did Sean come out with a new episode now? Oh, he did. Okay, now I'm going to push it out to all the subscribers, and then they get notified if they've chosen to subscribe. After that, then every time you publish new content, it just automatically feeds out to everybody, which is kind of nice. Another pro-con related to YouTube is audience retention. On YouTube, especially now that I've been getting a little bit more serious about it, I've learned that if you have people watching your videos for like more than 5 minutes, you're actually doing really, really good. And on a podcast, you can get people listening up to half hour, 1 hour. I mean, Joe Rogan's podcast, people listen to 2-3 hours of content all in one sitting. And for a YouTuber, that's gold, right? And so there are some really interesting things you can do there related to better storytelling opportunities. You have the ability to have more call to actions. You have the ability to just really build a deep relationship with a person. I would say more so on a podcast because of the way that people are consuming a podcast. For example, you shouldn't be watching a video while you're driving. Like, you just shouldn't do that, right? But you can totally listen to an hour-long podcast on your commute or on a flight or any of that stuff. So there's just really interesting behavioral consumption qualities that are unique to podcasting that make it just very, very powerful. The other thing about this is, you think about sheer numbers. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, there are over 500 million active YouTube channels. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
Like, a lot. There's less than 1 million podcasts right now. So there's good and bad to that, right? The good thing is, there's less competition, so you can kind of get in there. It's still very early in the season of podcasting right now, which is fantastic. But at the same time, it's like, well, how many overall listeners could you have versus how many viewers can you have on a YouTube channel? And this is why I think a lot of people are going for both, because on a podcast, you can build that really deep relationship. You can be with somebody on a walk, at the gym, on a plane, in the car, whatever. But with YouTube, it's like quick, informational, and the search engines and algorithms play your favorite too.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a great point because on YouTube, you're probably not going to be getting 30-minute, hour-long kind of consumption times with that deep storytelling and the connection that you could have on a podcast. But you're also getting some search advantages and you're getting maybe the chance to get to know people. So I'm curious kind of the Pat Flynn strategy. And we could also get into the execution of kind of doing everything. You're a little further in your career than maybe someone who's trying to juggle a lot of different stuff. But now that you are executing on a podcast, there's the creation challenges that come with it. Maybe it's a little simple if you just do audio and you don't have to worry about the video, but you're also executing on the video content. What are some thoughts around actually creating the bandwidth to create content when it comes to these different platforms and how you juggle those things and the complexity of everything?
I think the most important thing, no matter which platform you choose, is you plan your editorial calendar. Whether it's on YouTube or on podcasting, I've suffered from being in that content hamster wheel where you publish something and you're immediately like, oh gosh, what do I have to film next time? I have a deadline, and you're struggling, and then it kind of degrades the quality of your content because you're not planning that far ahead. So whichever platform you use, you want to make sure you plan your content ahead of time as much as possible. It's not always possible to do that, especially in some of the tech spaces where you don't know what the next phone is going to be or what the next big piece of equipment that's coming out. But as best as possible, try to come up with stuff so that you can batch process your episodes too. And I do this with my videos. I try to record 3 to 4 a day when I go into the studio to film with my videographer, and that's only once a week. And then on the podcast front, I pick a day of the week to do all my recordings, and that's Tuesday for me, which is nice. And I can do 3 to 4 episodes of a podcast at the same time. So if I come out weekly, I essentially have a month's worth of content ready to go with just 1 day of recording on both sides, which is nice.
That's amazing. And right now for you, the content is different though. YouTube content is unique and separate from the podcast, correct?
That is correct. There are a lot of people who take the audio from a video and then dump it into a podcast, which is fine, and there's some things you need to worry about with that. And then there's some people who start with a podcast and then they rip out the audio and put it onto YouTube, and there's a lot of things you have to worry about that as well. The main thing is if you're ripping audio from a video and putting it into a podcast, which you can do, you need to be careful, because if a listener's listening and you say things like, hey, look at this graph over here, or oh, I love how that kind of looks and feels, can you guys see this? If a person's just listening to that, they feel left out. They're not going to listen to your show because they know that you're not creating content for them and their behavioral sort of consumption primary means of doing that. And then on the other way, if you go from audio to video, that can be very smart. However, if you just have a slide up and you play your audio over that, all of you know, if you just see a slide up and you just listen and nothing's engaging, nothing's visual, you're going to leave. And if that's you and your channel, guess what happens? You're signaling to YouTube that your channel's not worth sticking around for, and then it kind of degrades your whole channel. As at least that's what I've heard, and that's not good either. So what you could do, and this is where you kind of have to be a little bit creative. You can take, for example, bits and pieces of your audio. Let's say you're interviewing somebody, which is really great, which is also another benefit of podcasting. It's much easier to interview somebody on a podcast versus like being in the same location and getting into this situation right here. So what you could do is you can take bits and pieces of your interviews, like the really good special moments that are about one particular topic. You can rip that out and put that onto YouTube. And then instead of just like a slide or a picture of that person you're interviewing, you can have bullet points show up or B-roll or some other things. Some people are actually filming their podcast interviews. So they're in the studio, they have the camera on them, and they're filming sort of face-to-face interviews, whether it's in person or on Skype, and that can work as well. A little bit harder to keep people engaged for longer, better than just a slide, but unless you have a well-known brand already, people don't know who you are, they're not going to stick around for long. So adding things like B-roll, text, other things like that can keep people engaged. Plus, you can then take advantage of the algorithms and the search, like the keyword findability with your podcast by taking chunks out that are important and relate to search terms.
I love that. Hey, before we get into the next stat, I just wanted to ask you for a quick favor, and that is, can you like this video? That'd mean the world to me. Hit that like button, and let's just jump right back into it. So it's 2019. If you're Pat Flynn and you're coaching someone who wants to build their influence, start making money online or building their brand or their business, and they're kind of trying to weigh their options, over 2 billion monthly active users on YouTube right now. It's the second largest search engine in the world. Massive opportunity on YouTube, but large crowds, and it can be harder to create video content, especially when you're just starting. Less people on podcasts, but maybe harder to get discovered. If you were to, coach me, I'm like, I want to break through. I know I want to get my message out. I'm entertaining both. What advice would you have for me?
What I would start to ask you, well, what platform would you be most interested in? Because I want you to enjoy the process. If I force you to do video and you don't want to do video, it's going to be really tough to get some good engaging content. Obviously, the best way, if you've known Sean for a while, the best way to like just do anything is just start, right? So pick one and go, but start with the one that you feel like you're most comfortable with, and then you can start branching out. What I would do is pick one, master your workflow there, productivity, efficiency, maybe even start hiring a team to help you with some of those bits and pieces so that you can get time back to then start focusing on other parts. I mean, for now, right now in my journey, it's really nice because I only have to worry about creating the content and building relationships and talking to people. I don't have to worry about all the editing and all the uploading. That's all handled by my team. And eventually you want to get to that point, which is really nice. But if I were you, I would really focus on, okay, what platform do you want to commit to for a period of time until you feel like you've got the workflow down, and then you can start to take that content and put it on the other platform. I will say there's a third option here, and our good friend Shalene Johnson's very good at this. She goes live, so she's engaging with her audience live. She takes a chunk of her live and puts that onto a podcast. And you can also put that on video, obviously, because it's live video. A little bit harder to do, especially if you're not comfortable going live. And again, the best way to get comfortable is just to go live and start practicing that. But it's really nice because you can kind of repurpose that live content very well across all different mediums, even like little micro pieces of content that you can put on social media to promote all those different platforms. The other thing about that is when you are going live, you want to make sure that whether it's for YouTube or podcasting, you don't want to interact with your audience on a recorded video or a recorded audio file. You want to separate that out. So this is what Shalene does. She goes on live, she has a great audience, and she interacts with them about a particular topic, and she'll go and back and forth with them, gets a lot of energy. I think that's good for her too, because then when it's time for her to go, okay guys, for the next however many minutes, it's just going to be me teaching you this stuff or talking to somebody about this stuff. Stay there. It's kind of like behind the scenes for them, so they get kind of little BTS stuff, which is really cool. And then she goes into however long to deliver that content. At the end, she goes back to the audience and asks, do you guys have any questions? Let's keep engaging on this. They feel like they got like a behind-the-scenes preview of a podcast or a video that's coming out later. And of course, she takes that audio, puts it into a podcast, takes that video, puts it into all the different places, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, I love that. So kind of thinking strategically, and another thing you could do is if you wanted to do both, you could start with maybe an interview show if you can get in person at an event like this. And a lot of people will come to an event like this, they'll sit down with their mic, their two mics, their Zoom H4n recorder or whatever, and they'll start a podcast. But you could just throw a GoPro down and get that video angle. And a lot of people are sometimes thinking, our friend James Wedmore is now starting to film his podcast, so he also has the YouTube content. So there's a lot of different ways to think about this potentially from a top-level strategy, and if you make a plan, then you ultimately can then execute and potentially be on both platforms, yeah?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And then the other cool part about this is no matter which one you're on, you want to start thinking about how to build your business and monetization, and so each one has its own benefits. A lot of advertisers and sponsors are excited about podcasts because of that retention that people have with their listeners versus YouTube, right? So it's really exciting. If you have brand deals already on your YouTube channel, you can kind of extend that. You can ask for more because of podcasts that you might have and just show them the numbers. The numbers are ridiculous in terms of how long people are listening for, which is cool. But I would encourage you to consider other ways to build your business outside of sponsorships and advertising, especially on the podcast too, because people are listening to you for however long. I mean, you're essentially coaching them for free. And of course, if they want that personalized coaching, you could start, a consultation company or an agency or coaching program or something like that. Or if you have online courses, it's a great way to give people sort of a preview of what it's going to be like to work with you versus a video, which is, usually a lot more engaging, a lot faster, and there's a lot of distractions. You can go to this related video or go to this suggested video or exit. You can't do that with a podcast. The cool thing with a podcast that I'd recommend if you start one is to shoot for that magic moment. And this is what I learned from YouTube that I put into the podcasting space. The hook. Get that hook down because that's what gives you that magic moment. The magic moment in YouTube is, okay, a person puts their hand away from the mouse and they're like engaged and ready to listen to you. With a podcast, it's they put that phone in the pocket and then they're listening to you for good. So either one, focus definitely on the hook.
I love it. Now, on that topic of monetization, you mentioned some different things that you want to be thinking about, kind of having a business model around it, maybe creating a product or coaching. But when you think about monetizing these two platforms, and you are monetizing in so many different ways, especially as the founder of Smart Passive Income, different income streams, what's just kind of maybe a menu of the opportunities for monetizing both a podcast and a YouTube channel?
Yeah, so on YouTube, you got AdSense, right? You don't have that on podcasts. advertising, brand deals, sponsorships, you can do that on both. Selling your own products, your own courses, those kinds of things work really well on both, and you should be. I see it happening more on podcasts actually than on YouTube, which I think there's a lot of opportunity for all you YouTubers out there. There's also Patreon. Patreon, you might know about, which is sort of like a PBS, paid for by viewers like you type of thing. Podcasts are using that. There's a guy named Tom Merrill who runs a tech podcast. He's making, I think, $6,000 to $8,000 a month just from fans who love his show because they're getting that deep with him in that relationship. Affiliate marketing. Huge opportunities there. I have courses on affiliate marketing because I feel like it's the most underutilized form of monetization out there. You have opportunities to be the person to connect that person to things they're already buying, and they just need a little bit of convincing from somebody they trust. So you can be that person on both those platforms. And I think once you start to end up being on both, it's great because you can talk about a product in one way and show it off on, for example, in person with your hands on a YouTube video, and then you can tell stories about that product and how it changed your life, or you can interview the founder of that product on your show, which they're going to be more likely than not to say yes because you're giving them a platform to talk about the story. I interviewed this guy. His name's Nathan Barry from ConvertKit, which is an email service provider. Not a very super sexy product. It's email service, right? But I interviewed him not about email. I interviewed him about how he bootstrapped this company, how he killed all of his other businesses to focus on this full time, how he almost gave up on it, and all the advice that he got. And as a result of that, 45 minutes later, people are clicking on that affiliate link to ConvertKit after that episode because they trust Nathan now. And that's the hard thing about affiliate marketing. It's not your product, so you have to work a little bit harder to get people to trust your recommendation. And if you have a platform to either show them how easy it is to use or how much this thing works, proof, or an interview with the founder, then it's going to be a win.
Yeah, I love that. So many different ways to monetize. Now, let's just talk about growth. And you've successfully grown multiple podcasts. And you have a YouTube channel with over 100,000 subscribers now. You definitely started years ago, wasn't a main focus for a while, but as you got back into it, you triggered growth again. So you know strategies on both sides. Let's just do a couple power strategies for each, starting with how to grow a podcast.
So how to grow a podcast. Number one, just stay consistent with your show. Very similar to YouTube. You want to make sure you stay consistent because you want to build that raving fan base who's going to expect your show when it comes out. My show comes out on Wednesday. On Thursday, if I don't come out, like my tribe lets me know. They get angry. So you want to build for that, right? Consistency, number one. But number two, guest podcasting. There's huge opportunities here for sure. There's a lot of podcasts that have other raving audiences that love and cherish that host. If you can get endorsed by that host on their show, it's huge. And one quick other tip that you can do on top of that is, let's say, for example, you get interviewed on a really popular person's show, and it's great. Well, let's add fuel to the fire. Let's pay that person, like if you, instead of paying for cold ads like on Facebook, pay that person to boost a post to their followers. That way more of their followers are listening. Everybody says yes to that because you're essentially giving them more money to share their stuff and break through the algorithms on Facebook. But guess what? You're showing more people that episode where that person endorsed you, right? So it's kind of a cool sort of second level trick that you could use to grow your podcast that way. Also interviewing up and comers. A lot of people on podcasts feel like, oh, I have to interview the top level people, but no. Those people are A, getting asked all the time, and B, less likely to share that show. But if you find somebody who's maybe on the new and noteworthy list on iTunes and is kind of up and coming and wants to kind of be involved and is really energetic and just coming up, I mean, help them. They're going to help you. You guys can grow together. And that's a great way to grow for podcasts as well. It's less about search and more about just the relationships and getting promoted and helped by others.
I love it. Okay, and then you've been growing a YouTube channel. What has been working for you, and what are some of the things you've been learning?
Well, on a similar route, collaborations are obviously key there as well, but a little bit harder to figure out and schedule. So the big growth tip for me is really get into your analytics using tools like vidIQ or TubeBuddy to understand sort of what keywords that people are searching for, and basically just finding the top videos that are about those keywords and making your video better. Just shoot for better watch time. So work on your hook so they're going to stick around. Keep them engaged by pattern interrupting and all that kind of stuff. Keep them involved so that they'll watch that video longer. And eventually Google and YouTube are going to start ranking your video higher than the others. And this is how I've had videos like how to start a podcast be the #1 podcasting video on YouTube now. I think, and it just recently popped too. The other thing about YouTube is you got to be pretty patient with things. If you do it right in your research up front, you're going to start to see things ramp up over time. And so I think that video just crossed 400,000 views, which is amazing. So it's exciting also to see just that many people interested in podcasting coming onto YouTube to learn. So go for search terms, make better content, and obviously your thumbnail is going to be huge too.
And it's powerful that you mentioned consistency, of course, on both platforms, because anything, you have to stay consistent, and it builds momentum over time. Like just like you said on YouTube, when you do those best practices, eventually it begins to snowball and videos start suggesting each other, which reminds me of a strategy that you did too that I really loved. And I don't know how strategic this was, but you also jumped on a trending conversation and even offered your point of view to a Gary Vaynerchuk video one time, and then that video blew up. Was that intentional? What was your thinking? He had some opinions about passive income. You're the smart passive income guy, so it was actually very related to your kind of a niche thing. It got some buzz. What happened there?
Well, my channel is Smart Passive Income, and Gary Vee came out with a video called Passive Income is BS. So of course, I just felt like this wasn't a strategy for growth or getting views. It was like, this is about my world, so I got to come up and step up and share my thoughts on this. There was no play on like getting views, and of course, after I published that, just the fact that I'm creating a video about that in response to Gary is going to generate curiosity, and people want to know what I'm going to say. So I think that, combined with a great thumbnail of like me going like this while watching the video, and like on a little thumbnail, like I think it all worked in combination to really start ramping up. And I think in a couple days it had seen like 65, 70K views. And I think the big strategy there is A, talk about stuff that people want to know about and that's relevant to you and your audience, and B, don't be afraid. I think that was the other thing about this that I was a little reluctant to do, because I'm not a guy who's trying to start or pick fights or anything like that, but this was something that was really important to me, and so I wanted to share it, and I think that's why it really picked up, because I actually just said, you know what, this is important. I might get some flack for this, but let's do it.
I love that you did that, and that actually challenges me to think, okay, what conversations should I join online that I'm very passionate about, but I might hesitate because I'd say, oh, what are people going to think? So think about that. What could be maybe a polarizing point of view or your unique point of view that you could put out on some trending conversations that could really be a growth strategy that works for you. Now, question of the day, I would also love to hear, are you focusing on YouTube or podcasts these days? And are you thinking about launching one or the other, or doing both? Tell us in the comment section below. But Pat, thank you so much for all the value you've been adding, and you've got a lot of cool projects going on, including Smart Passive Income, but where can people find you, and what are you up to right now?
So if you're watching this on YouTube, probably best place is just Pat Flynn on YouTube, my channel. But smartpassiveincome.com is my main hub where I have all things going on. You probably saw a video of me a while back talking about the Switch Pod, which is going off, and that's a lot of fun. So I just like to try new things and share the process along the way, and that's what I know what you do too. So I'm just super stoked to be here, and thank you for allowing me to serve your audience.
100%. So go check out everything Pat's doing. He adds massive value. He's one of the best dudes in the industry, and definitely check out some other videos in our YouTube tip series that we'll link up on the playlist, and we'll put a link to that playlist in the description below, and we'll see you in the next video.